The last time anyone saw Daniel Mitchell, he was standing at the ship's railing on Deck 7, his red t-shirt bright against the dark Caribbean night. His mother had told him to stay close, but 11-year-old boys don't always listen. 15 years later, someone uploaded a video to YouTube. What was in that video would shatter everything his family believed about the night he disappeared. This is the story of a boy who vanished from a cruise ship, a family that never stopped searching, and a recording that proves someone had been hiding the truth all along. Daniel James Mitchell was 11 years old in the summer of 2008. He had dark curly hair that never stayed combed, brown eyes that were always curious, and a smile that his father Robert said could convince anyone of anything. The Mitchells lived in Columbus, Ohio, a landlocked family who dreamed of the ocean. Daniel was obsessed with marine life. His bedroom walls were covered with posters of sharks, whales, and coral reefs. He had every Jacques Cousteau documentary memorized and spent hours watching videos about deep-sea exploration. His dream was to become a marine biologist, to study creatures in the depths of the ocean that no one had ever seen before. His mother, Jennifer, was a high school English teacher. Robert worked as an accountant for a mid-sized firm. They had saved for 3 years for this cruise, their first real family vacation. Daniel's older sister, Ashley, was 14 and mostly interested in the ship's teen club and the possibility of meeting boys from other states. The Caribbean Dream Cruise was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime, 7 days of sun, beaches, and adventure. They boarded the massive ship in Miami on June 14th, 2008. Daniel's eyes had gone wide when he saw the enormous vessel. It looked like a floating city with pools, restaurants, a movie theater, and even a rock-climbing wall. "This is going to be the best week ever," Daniel had said as they walked up the gangway, his backpack stuffed with his camera, notebook, and books about tropical fish. He had no way of knowing he would never make it home. The Caribbean Dream was one of the largest cruise ships in the world in 2008. It carried 3,200 passengers and 1,200 crew members. It was a city at sea with 14 decks, multiple restaurants, shops, entertainment venues, and endless corridors that all looked the same. The first 3 days of the cruise were perfect. The Mitchell family explored the ship, ate too much food, and visited ports in the Bahamas. Daniel spent hours at the ship's railing, staring out at the endless blue water, taking photos with his digital camera of dolphins that sometimes followed the ship. Jennifer remembered those first days as pure happiness. Daniel was in heaven, she would later tell investigators. He loved everything about being on the water. He made friends with some of the crew members who worked on the lower decks. They taught him about how the ship worked, showed him the engine rooms. He was fascinated by everything. Robert noticed that Daniel had become particularly friendly with one crew member, a young man named Carlos Ruiz, who worked in guest services. Carlos was from the Philippines, maybe 25 years old, and seemed genuinely interested in Daniel's passion for marine biology. He gave Daniel behind-the-scenes tours and answered his endless questions about how ships navigated the ocean. Carlos was great with Daniel, Robert recalled. He treated him like a little brother. We were grateful someone was taking time with our son. Ashley, the older sister, was mostly off doing her own thing with the other teenagers. She barely spent time with her family, which was typical for a 14-year-old. Years later, she would carry crushing guilt about not being there that night. June 17, 2008. The fourth night of the cruise, the Caribbean Dream was at sea, traveling between Grand Cayman and Cozumel, Mexico. The ship wouldn't reach port until the following morning. The Mitchell family had dinner together at 6:30 p.m. in the main dining room. Daniel was excited because the ship was hosting a special Ocean Explorer Night with presentations about marine life. After dinner, he wanted to attend the 8 p.m. presentation in the ship's theater. Jennifer and Robert had planned to go to the adult comedy show at 9 p.m. Ashley wanted to go to the teen dance party. They agreed that Daniel could go to his presentation alone. He was a responsible kid, and the ship felt safe. Thousands of families made the same decision every day on cruise ships. "We'll meet back at the cabin at 10:30, Jennifer told Daniel as they split up after dinner. "Stay in the public areas. Don't go wandering off." "I won't, Mom," Daniel promised. "I just want to see the presentation and maybe take some photos of the ocean at night. The stars are supposed to be amazing when we're far from land." That was the last normal conversation Jennifer would ever have with her son. Daniel attended the Ocean Explorer presentation. Multiple witnesses confirmed seeing him there, sitting in the third row, taking notes in his little notebook. The presentation ended at 9:15 p.m. Security camera footage, reviewed later by investigators, showed Daniel leaving the theater at 9:18 p.m. He walked through the main atrium, stopped to buy a soda at one of the bars. The bartender remembered him, and then headed toward the elevators. The cameras showed him getting on an elevator at 9:31 p.m. going up. He got off on Deck 7, the deck where the outdoor promenade ran around the ship. It was a popular place for evening walks, with a wooden deck and railings overlooking the ocean. At 9:47 p.m., a couple returning from dinner saw Daniel standing at the railing on the starboard side of Deck 7, taking photos of the ocean with his digital camera. They said he seemed happy, calm, completely normal. They walked past him and didn't think anything of it. At 10:35 p.m., when Daniel didn't return to the cabin, Jennifer started to worry. By 10:50 p.m., when he still hadn't shown up, Robert went looking for him. He checked all the public areas, the theater, the arcade, the pools, the teen club, in case Daniel had gone to find Ashley. Nothing. At 11:20 p.m., Robert reported Daniel missing to ship security. Within minutes, a ship-wide search began. This wasn't the first time a passenger had gone missing on a cruise ship, and the crew had protocols. By midnight, every crew member on the ship was searching. Every public space was checked. Announcements were made over the PA system. Daniel's description was circulated. 11 years old, 4 feet 10 inches, 85 pounds. Curly brown hair, brown eyes, last seen wearing a red T-shirt with a shark logo, blue shorts, and white sneakers. The ship's security reviewed camera footage. The last sighting of Daniel was at 9:47 p.m. on Deck 7, standing at the railing. After that, he simply vanished. No cameras showed him leaving that area. No one reported seeing him after 9:47 p.m. It was as if he had dissolved into the night air. At 2:30 a.m., the ship's captain made the devastating decision to notify the U.S. Coast Guard that a child had gone overboard. The assumption was that Daniel had somehow fallen or jumped from the railing into the dark Caribbean waters. Jennifer's screams when they told her could be heard throughout the corridor. Robert went into a state of shock, unable to process what was happening. Ashley locked herself in the bathroom and sobbed. The Caribbean dream turned around and began retracing its route, searching for any sign of Daniel. Coast Guard helicopters and boats joined the search at daybreak. They searched for 3 days, covering hundreds of square miles of ocean. They found nothing. No body, no clothing, no evidence that Daniel Mitchell had ever been in the water at all. The disappearance of a child from a cruise ship triggered an immediate and extensive investigation. The FBI, Coast Guard, and Bahamian authorities all got involved since the ship had been in international waters. Every passenger and crew member was interviewed. Every inch of the ship was searched. Dogs were brought in to search for remains. Divers checked the waters around the ports where the ship had docked. The security footage was analyzed frame by frame. Investigators confirmed Daniel had been on Deck 7 at 9:47 p.m. After that, nothing. No cameras captured him leaving the area, but there were blind spots. Sections of the deck not covered by cameras, including parts of the railing where someone could have fallen without being recorded. The theory that emerged was tragic but seemingly straightforward. Daniel had been leaning over the railing to take photos of the ocean, possibly trying to get a better angle, and had fallen. The railing was 42 inches high, tall enough for safety, but an 11-year-old boy climbing or leaning too far could have gone over. Cruise ship overboard incidents are rare, but do happen, the lead investigator explained to the family. In most cases, especially at night in open water, the person is never recovered. The ocean currents, the time delay before the alarm is raised, the darkness, all these factors make rescue nearly impossible. But Jennifer refused to accept this explanation. Daniel was careful, she insisted. He was afraid of heights. He wouldn't have leaned over that far. He just wouldn't. Robert had questions too. "Where is his camera?" he demanded. Daniel never went anywhere without that camera. If he fell overboard, the camera would have fallen with him or been left on the deck. But it's not there. Someone has it. The investigation found no evidence of foul play. No witnesses reported seeing anyone else with Daniel on Deck 7 that night. No crew members or passengers had suspicious backgrounds or behavior. Carlos Ruiz, the crew member who had befriended Daniel, was questioned extensively. He said he had been working his shift in guest services from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. that night and had not seen Daniel after dinner. His alibi was confirmed by multiple co-workers and security footage showing him at his desk. After 6 weeks of investigation, with no new evidence and no body recovered, the official conclusion was that Daniel Mitchell had accidentally fallen overboard and drowned. The case was closed. The Caribbean Dream returned to service. Life went on for everyone except the Mitchell family. Time moves differently when you lose a child and never find the body. Jennifer Mitchell would later describe it as living in a state of permanent suspension, unable to grieve properly because there was no grave, no closure, no final goodbye, just an empty space where her son used to be. The first year was the hardest. Every time the phone rang, Jennifer's heart would race. Maybe it was news. Maybe Daniel had been found, rescued by a passing ship, suffering from amnesia. Maybe he had washed up on a deserted island and survived. The mind creates impossible scenarios when reality is too painful to accept. Robert threw himself into investigation even after the official case was closed. He hired private investigators who specialized in maritime disappearances. He contacted every cruise ship advocacy group, every organization that fought for better safety regulations on ships. He became an expert on cruise ship disappearances and learned that Daniel's case was far from unique. "Do you know how many people vanish from cruise ships every year?" Robert told a local news reporter in 2009. "Dozens, and in most cases there's no real investigation. The ship is in international waters, so jurisdiction is complicated. The cruise lines have powerful lawyers. Cases get closed quickly, ruled as accidents or suicides. Families are left with nothing." The Mitchell family became advocates for cruise ship safety reform. They pushed for better camera coverage, improved railing heights, mandatory man-overboard detection systems. It gave them purpose, a way to channel their grief into something that might prevent other families from experiencing the same nightmare. But it didn't bring Daniel home. Ashley struggled with survivor's guilt throughout her teenage years. She had been at a dance party while her little brother disappeared. She wrote in her journal, "I was dancing and flirting with some boy whose name I don't even remember, and Daniel was dying. I should have been with him. I should have protected him." She started having panic attacks on the anniversary of Daniel's disappearance. She refused to go near water, no pools, no beaches, no boats. In college, she changed her major to criminal justice, determined to work in missing persons cases. Daniel's disappearance had shaped the entire trajectory of her life. Jennifer couldn't let go of Daniel's room. It remained exactly as it had been when they left for the cruise in June 2008. The marine biology books stacked on the nightstand, the posters of sharks and whales on the walls, the collection of seashells he had gathered from various beach trips over the years, each one labeled with the date and location where he found it. Robert had wanted to pack everything away, said it was unhealthy to maintain a shrine to their missing son, but Jennifer couldn't do it. Packing away Daniel's things felt like admitting he was never coming home. The marriage didn't survive. By 2012, 4 years after Daniel's disappearance, Jennifer and Robert divorced. The grief had created a chasm between them that couldn't be bridged. Robert remarried eventually, started a new family. though he never stopped thinking about Daniel. Jennifer never remarried. She said part of her was still waiting for her son to come home. The media attention faded quickly. Daniel's disappearance was news for a few weeks, then a few follow-up stories on the anniversary, then nothing. The world moved on. Other tragedies took the headlines. Other families experienced their own nightmares. By 2015, 7 years after Daniel vanished, his case was one of dozens of cold cases involving cruise ship disappearances. The Caribbean Dream was still in operation, now under a different name after being sold to another cruise line. Most of the crew from 2008 had moved on to other ships or other jobs. The Mitchell family had learned to live with the not knowing. They held memorial services on Daniel's birthday and the anniversary of his disappearance. They kept his memory alive through the foundation they had established in his name, which provided support to other families of missing persons. They had accepted, as much as anyone can accept such things, that they would never know exactly what happened to their son on that dark Caribbean night. They had no way of knowing that someone had been keeping a secret for 15 years. They had no way of knowing that evidence of what really happened to Daniel had existed all along, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. March 23, 2023. 15 years after Daniel vanished. Jennifer Mitchell was 58 years old now, retired from teaching, living alone in a small apartment in Columbus. She spent her days volunteering at the foundation, tending her garden, and trying to find peace with the unanswered questions that had defined half her life. She rarely used social media, but she maintained a Facebook page for the Daniel Mitchell Foundation. That evening, she was scrolling through the page's messages when she saw one that made her blood run cold. The message was from someone named A Friend, with no profile picture. It had been sent 20 minutes earlier. Mrs. Mitchell, I found something you need to see. I'm sorry for your loss. Below the message was a link to a YouTube video. Jennifer's hands started shaking. Over the years, she had received dozens of messages from cruel people who got some sick satisfaction from tormenting families of missing children. Fake tips, manipulated photos, vicious lies. She had learned to ignore most of them, but something about this message felt different. With trembling fingers, she clicked the link. It took her to a YouTube channel called Found Footage Archive, with only one video uploaded. The video was titled Cruise Ship, June 2008, Unknown. The thumbnail was dark, showing what looked like the interior of a ship's corridor at night. Jennifer took a deep breath and pressed play. The video was grainy, clearly recorded on an old device, maybe a phone or camera from the mid-2000s. The timestamp in the corner read 06/17/2008, 21:52, June the 17th, 2008. 9:52 p.m., 5 minutes after Daniel was last seen on Deck 7. The footage showed a narrow corridor, the kind found in the crew areas of cruise ships. The person holding the camera was walking quickly, breathing hard. The camera bounced with each step, then voices. 2 people talking, one older, one younger. Shouldn't be down here, kid. This area is for crew only. I know, I'm sorry. Carlos said I could see the engine room. He said to meet him here. Jennifer's heart stopped. That voice. That was Daniel's voice. She would recognize it anywhere, even after 15 years. Her son's voice, preserved in this recording, speaking words she had never heard before. Carlos isn't here. Come on, let's get you back upstairs. The camera rounded a corner, and then there he was. Daniel. Wearing his red shark t-shirt and blue shorts, looking exactly as he had the last time Jennifer saw him. He was talking to a crew member Jennifer didn't recognize, a man in a white uniform with dark hair. But Carlos said, "Forget what Carlos said. You're not supposed to be in crew areas. If my supervisor catches you down here, we'll both be in trouble." The camera kept recording as the crew member put his hand on Daniel's shoulder and started guiding him down the corridor. They disappeared around another corner, Daniel's voice fading. "I was just looking for the engine room." The video continued for another 30 seconds, showing empty corridors, the sound of footsteps, then abruptly cut to black. Jennifer sat frozen, staring at the black screen. The video was 1 minute and 47 seconds long, but it had just shattered 15 years of assumptions about what happened to her son. Daniel hadn't been alone on Deck 7 at 9:47 p.m. Somehow, between that last security camera sighting and this video at 9:52 p.m., Daniel had gotten into the crew areas of the ship, the areas where there were no security cameras, the areas where passengers weren't allowed, and someone had recorded it. Someone had been there, had witnessed Daniel being led through those corridors by an unidentified crew member, and had never come forward. For 15 years, this video had existed somewhere, and now someone had decided to share it. Jennifer called Robert immediately, her voice shaking so badly she could barely speak. "Robert, there's a video of Daniel from that night. He's alive in the video. He's in the crew area." "What, Jennifer? What are you talking about?" "Someone posted it on YouTube. It's from 9:52 p.m. on the night he disappeared. Daniel is talking to a crew member. Robert, he wasn't alone on the deck. Someone took him into the crew areas." Robert was at Jennifer's apartment within 20 minutes. Ashley, who now lived in Cincinnati and worked as a victim's advocate, drove up immediately when she heard. By midnight, all three of them were sitting in Jennifer's living room, watching the video over and over again, trying to process what they were seeing. "This changes everything," Robert said, his voice tight with anger and something that might have been hope. "This proves Daniel didn't fall overboard at 9:47 p.m. He was alive at 9:52 inside the ship, with a crew member we were never told about." Ashley was analyzing every frame of the video on her laptop. The crew member's uniform, that's housekeeping or maybe maintenance. And look at the corridor. Those are definitely crew quarters, lower decks. The question is, who recorded this? And why did they wait 15 years to share it? Jennifer was reading the comments on the YouTube video. There were only a dozen so far, all posted in the last few hours. Is this real? Someone needs to contact the FBI. That poor kid, where did he go after this? Who recorded this and why? One comment caught Jennifer's eye. The person filming is breathing hard like they're scared. They're following Daniel and the crew member. This wasn't an accident. The person filming knew something was wrong. At 1:30 a.m., Jennifer called the FBI field office in Columbus. She was transferred to the agent who had originally worked Daniel's case, now semi-retired, but still consulting on cold cases. Special Agent Marcus Chen listened to her explanation, asked her to send him the YouTube link, and promised to look into it immediately. "Mrs. Mitchell," Agent Chen said carefully, "I need you to prepare yourself. This video raises a lot of questions, but it might not give us the answers you're hoping for. 15 years is a long time. The trail is very cold. But I promise you, we will investigate this thoroughly." By morning, the video had been viewed 50,000 times. By the afternoon, over 500,000. The comments section exploded with theories, speculation, armchair detectives analyzing every pixel of the footage. News outlets picked up the story. Missing cruise ship boy. New video emerges after 15 years. Daniel Mitchell case reopened after mysterious YouTube upload. Cruise ship disappearance. Was it really an accident? The FBI's Cybercrime Division began working to trace the YouTube account. The Found Footage Archive channel had been created just 2 days before the video was uploaded. The email used to create the account was a burner address that led nowhere. The video itself had been uploaded from an IP address that bounced through multiple VPN servers across different countries, making it impossible to trace the actual location. Whoever uploaded this video had taken extreme measures to remain anonymous. They wanted the video to be seen, but they didn't want to be found. Meanwhile, forensic video analysts confirmed what Jennifer already knew in her heart. The video was authentic. It hadn't been manipulated or fabricated. This was real footage from June 17, 2008, showing Daniel Mitchell alive after the time he was supposedly to have fallen overboard. The cruise line that had owned the Caribbean Dream in 2008, now operating under a different corporate name, was immediately contacted by investigators. They were required to provide all crew records from that voyage, all security footage that still existed, all incident reports. But there was a problem. The ship had changed owners twice since 2008. Many records had been lost or destroyed in accordance with standard record retention policies. The security footage from that night no longer existed. It had been recorded over decades ago. Crew employment records from 15 years ago were incomplete. However, they were able to provide a manifest of all crew members who had been on the ship during that June 2008 voyage. There were 1,200 names. Agent Chen's team began the painstaking process of tracking down every single person, looking for anyone who might know something about what happened to Daniel Mitchell. Carlos Ruiz, the crew member Daniel had befriended, was now living in the Philippines. When contacted by Filipino police on behalf of the FBI, Carlos expressed shock and sadness about the video. "I told Daniel to stay in passenger areas," Carlos said through an interpreter. "I never invited him to crew areas. That would be against all regulations. If someone told Daniel I wanted to meet him in the engine room, they were lying. I was working my shift that night. I never left the guest services desk." Carlos's statements were verified by old work schedules and the testimony of his coworkers from that time. He had been where he said he was. Whoever had lured Daniel into the crew areas had used Carlos's name, but it hadn't been Carlos. The unidentified crew member in the video became the focus of intense scrutiny. The FBI released enhanced screenshots asking anyone who had worked on cruise ships in 2008 to help identify him. The uniform suggested housekeeping or maintenance, but the man's face was partially obscured by shadows and the poor quality of the video. Tips started pouring in. Former cruise ship employees called with potential identifications, but most led nowhere. The man in the video could have been any of dozens of crew members who fit that general description. Then, 3 weeks after the video was posted, the Found Footage Archive YouTube channel uploaded a second video. Jennifer was sleeping when Ashley called at 3 a.m. "Mom, there's another video. The same channel just posted again." Jennifer was at her computer in seconds. The new video was titled, "Cruise Ship, June 2008. What Really Happened?" This video was longer, 4 minutes and 36 seconds, and it was horrifying. The footage started the same way, with the same timestamp, or 6/17/2008, 21:52. But this video showed what happened after Daniel and the crew member had rounded the corner and disappeared from view in the first video. The person recording had followed them, staying back, camera pointed down the corridor. The video quality was terrible, dark, shaky, grainy, but the audio was clear enough. Daniel's voice, "Where are we going? I thought the engine room was that way." The crew member, "Shortcut. Come on, kid. Your parents are probably looking for you." They walked through a series of corridors, going deeper into the crew areas, down a stairwell, through a door marked Authorized Personnel Only, into what looked like a storage area filled with supplies, and then the crew member's entire demeanor changed. "All right, kid, this is where you're going to stay for a while." Daniel's voice, now scared. "What? Why? I want to go back to my cabin." "You're not going back to your cabin. I don't understand. What's happening?" "Shut up. Sit down and shut up." The video showed Daniel being pushed into the storage room. The door closed. The camera swung around, showing a glimpse of the person filming, a crew member, also in uniform, breathing heavily, clearly panicked. Then the person filming whispered, barely audible, oh God, what do I do?" The video continued, now showing the corridor outside the storage room. Minutes passed. The person filming seemed frozen, unsure what to do. Then footsteps. Another crew member appeared, different from the first one. Older, with gray hair, wearing what looked like an officer's uniform. The person filming pressed against the wall, still recording, as the officer approached the storage room door and knocked. "It's done. We're ready." The door opened. The first crew member, the one who had taken Daniel, stepped out. "The kid's secured. No problems." "Good. The boat will be here in 20 minutes. Usual spot, deck 2, port side. 11 p.m. What about the cameras? Already handled. Security's been paid. No one will see anything. Jennifer watched in horror as the two crew members walked away down the corridor, casually discussing logistics like they were planning a supply delivery, not the kidnapping of a child. The video continued. The person filming stayed in place for another minute, then seemed to make a decision. The camera approached the storage room door. A hand reached out, shaking badly, and tried the handle. Locked. A whispered voice. Male, young. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do. If I report this, they'll kill me. They'll kill my family. I'm sorry." Then the person filming turned and ran, the camera bouncing wildly as footsteps echoed through the corridor. The video went black. The description of the video contained a message. "I recorded this 15 years ago. I was 19 years old, working my first contract on a cruise ship. I witnessed something I shouldn't have seen. I was too scared to report it because the people involved threatened me and my family. I've carried this guilt for 15 years. Daniel Mitchell didn't fall overboard. He was taken. Someone needs to find out what happened to him after this. I can't come forward. They told me they would kill my family if I ever talked. But I can't keep this secret anymore. I'm sorry I waited so long. I hope this helps find the truth." The video exploded across the internet. Within hours, it had millions of views. The FBI released a statement confirming they were treating Daniel Mitchell's disappearance as a kidnapping and potential human trafficking case. The investigation was fully reopened. The cruise line was in crisis mode. Their stock price plummeted. Lawsuits were filed. The revelation that crew members and security personnel had been involved in kidnapping passengers was a nightmare scenario. But the biggest question remained. What happened to Daniel after he was taken off the ship? Where had he been taken? Was he still alive? And who were the men in the video? The FBI assembled a task force specifically for the Daniel Mitchell case. Agent Chen came out of retirement to lead it. The second video had transformed this from a cold case into an active investigation of organized crime, human trafficking, and corruption within the cruise industry. The first breakthrough came from the cruise line's personnel records. Using enhanced screenshots from both videos, facial recognition software, and testimony from former crew members, investigators identified the first crew member, the one who had taken Daniel into the storage room. His name was Viktor Petrov, a Bulgarian national who had worked in housekeeping on the Caribbean Dream from 2007 to 2009. After leaving the cruise line, he had returned to Bulgaria and had died in 2016 in a car accident. Dead men tell no tales, and the trail went cold with him. But the second man, the officer with gray hair, was more promising. Several former crew members identified him as Thomas Walsh, who had been the ship's security chief in 2008. Walsh had been responsible for overseeing all security operations on the ship, including camera systems, security personnel, and incident response. If Walsh had been involved in Daniel's kidnapping, it explained why the official investigation had found nothing. The person in charge of security had been covering up the crime from the beginning. Finding Thomas Walsh became the top priority. According to employment records, he had left the cruise line in 2009, just a year after Daniel's disappearance. His last known address was in Florida, but when agents arrived at that location, they found he had moved years ago. The trail of Thomas Walsh led through a series of jobs in maritime security, always moving, never staying in one place long. He had worked for different cruise lines, cargo shipping companies, and private yacht services. It was a pattern investigators recognized, someone trying to stay mobile, stay hidden. Meanwhile, the FBI was investigating the human trafficking angle. The conversation in the video about the boat arriving and the usual spot suggested an organized operation. Daniel hadn't been the random victim of a lone predator. This had been coordinated, planned, professional. Agent Chen consulted with Homeland Security Investigations and Interpol. They discovered something chilling. The Caribbean Dreams route in June 2008 had taken it close to several small islands known to be waypoints for human trafficking networks. Children would be taken from ships or coastal areas, transported to these islands, and then distributed to various locations around the world. The grim reality was that Daniel Mitchell had likely been sold. A healthy 11-year-old American boy would have been valuable in the international human trafficking market. The possibilities of what might have happened to him were too horrible for Jennifer to contemplate. But there was also hope. If Daniel had been trafficked rather than killed, he might still be alive somewhere. 15 years later, he would be 26 years old. He might have escaped. He might have been rescued. He might be living under a different name, possibly with no memory of his real identity. The FBI launched a global campaign, sharing age-progressed photos of what Daniel would look like at 26. The images were distributed to law enforcement agencies in every country, particularly those known for human trafficking activity. Tips flooded in, hundreds of possible sightings. A man in Thailand who looked like adult Daniel, someone in Eastern Europe, a person in Brazil. Each lead had to be investigated, DNA samples collected when possible, compared against the Mitchell family's DNA. None were matches, but the investigation continued. The anonymous person who had uploaded the videos, the crew member who had witnessed Daniel's kidnapping, remained silent. They didn't upload any more videos. They didn't respond to the FBI's public pleas for them to come forward with immunity. They had shared what they knew and disappeared back into anonymity, still afraid of the people who had threatened them 15 years ago. Then, 2 months after the second video was posted, Thomas Walsh's daughter contacted the FBI. Sarah Walsh was 34 years old, living in Seattle with her wife and 2 children. She had grown up watching her father work on cruise ships, never questioning his career or lifestyle. But when she saw the viral videos of Daniel Mitchell, she recognized her father immediately. "That's my dad," she told Agent Chen over the phone, her voice shaking. "The older man in the uniform. That's definitely my dad." Sarah agreed to meet with investigators. What she told them opened up an entirely new dimension of the case. Thomas Walsh, her father, had been involved in human trafficking for years, using his position as security chief on various cruise ships to facilitate the kidnapping of passengers and crew members. He would identify vulnerable targets, children traveling with inattentive parents, young women traveling alone, crew members who wouldn't be missed. He worked with organized crime networks based in Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia. The victims would be taken off ships during port calls or transferred to smaller boats while at sea. The cruise line's lax security and jurisdictional complexity of international waters made it the perfect cover for his crimes. "I didn't know any of this until 2 years ago," Sarah explained, tears streaming down her face. "My mom died in 2019, and I was going through her things. I found letters, documents, evidence that my dad had been involved in horrible things. My mom had known. She had kept quiet because he threatened to hurt me if she ever said anything." Sarah revealed that Thomas Walsh had died in 2021 of a heart attack. He had never faced justice for his crimes, but before he died, he had confessed everything to Sarah's mother, who had written it all down in a journal. Insurance, she called it, in case something happened to her. The journal was a roadmap of Thomas Walsh's criminal activities over 2 decades. Dozens of victims, multiple trafficking networks, corruption that reached into several cruise lines' management structures, and on page 47 there was an entry about Daniel Mitchell. June 17, 2008. Boy from Ohio, 11 years old. Tom said this one was special order from a buyer in Southeast Asia. High price. Transferred to the boat at 11 p.m. Tom said the kid was smart, kept asking questions. Buyer specifically wanted smart American kids for some kind of program. Tom got $50,000 for this one. Jennifer Mitchell read these words in a FBI conference room and felt sick. Her son had been sold, like merchandise, for $50,000 to someone in Southeast Asia for some kind of program. But the journal had one more crucial piece of information. Buyer's name, Chen Yong Wei, associated with facility in Cambodia. Finally, after 15 years, they had a lead on where Daniel had been taken. Chen Yongwei was a name that appeared in Interpol databases associated with human trafficking, forced labor, and organized crime in Cambodia and Thailand. He operated several businesses, officially legitimate factories and agricultural operations, but intelligence suggested these were fronts for illegal activities. One facility in particular caught investigators' attention, a remote compound in rural Cambodia, described in intelligence reports as an education center, but suspected of being a forced labor camp where trafficked children and adults were held and exploited. The Cambodian government had limited reach in remote areas where corruption was rampant and powerful. Criminals operated with impunity. But international pressure from the FBI, Interpol, and the U.S. State Department forced Cambodian authorities to conduct a raid on Chen Yongwei's compound in August 2023. What they found there shocked the world. Over 200 people were being held in conditions resembling slavery, children and adults from over 30 countries, forced to work in online scam operations. They spent their days running romance scams, investment frauds, and cryptocurrency schemes, generating millions of dollars for their captors. Many had been trafficked years ago. Some had been born in the compound, children of earlier victims. They lived in cramped dormitories, were given minimal food, and were beaten if they didn't meet their daily quotas of scam victims. Among those rescued was a 26-year-old man who spoke English with an American accent, though he said his name was David and he didn't remember where he was from. He had been at the compound for as long as he could remember, at least 15 years. He had vague memories of being on a boat, of being somewhere else before, but the details were fuzzy. He had been told his family was dead, that he had no home to return to. A DNA test was rushed through processing. Agent Chen personally flew to Cambodia to meet the young man who might be Daniel Mitchell. Jennifer, Robert, and Ashley waited in Columbus, barely able to breathe, hoping and terrified in equal measure. 3 days later, Agent Chen called. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need you to sit down." "Is it him?" Jennifer asked, her voice barely a whisper. "The DNA is a match. Daniel is alive. We're bringing him home." The reunion between Daniel Mitchell and his family was not like in the movies. There was no running into each other's arms, no immediate connection, no instant restoration of what had been lost. The man who stepped off the plane at Columbus International Airport was a stranger. He had Daniel's eyes, Daniel's curly hair, now darker and longer. But he didn't remember being Daniel Mitchell. He didn't remember Jennifer or Robert or Ashley. He didn't remember Columbus, Ohio, or his bedroom full of marine biology books, or his dream of becoming a marine biologist. 15 years of trauma, psychological conditioning, and isolation had erased most of his memories of his life before Cambodia. The compound operators had deliberately destroyed their victims' identities, telling them their families were dead, that they had no past, that this was their only reality. David was what he responded to. That was the name he had been given at the compound. He spoke English, but also Khmer and Chinese. He was quiet, withdrawn, visibly uncomfortable with the attention and emotion from these people who claimed to be his family. The psychological evaluation revealed severe PTSD, complex trauma, and identity fragmentation. The boy who had loved the ocean and dreamed of studying dolphins had been replaced by a survivor who had spent 15 years doing whatever was necessary to stay alive in a nightmare. But Jennifer didn't care. Her son was alive. After 15 years of not knowing, of imagining the worst, of living in suspended grief, her son was alive and he was home. The healing process would take years. Daniel, they called him Daniel, though he still sometimes responded more readily to David, underwent intensive therapy. The FBI Victim Services provided support. The foundation that Jennifer had started in Daniel's name now helped Daniel himself reintegrate into society. Slowly, fragments of memory began returning. A smell that reminded him of his mother's cooking. A piece of music that triggered a memory of his sister. A picture of a dolphin that made him feel something he couldn't quite name. One day, 6 months after his return, Jennifer took Daniel to the Columbus Zoo's aquarium. They stood in front of the shark tank. Daniel had loved sharks as a boy and watched the creatures glide through the water. "This feels familiar," Daniel said quietly. "I think I've been here before." "You have," Jennifer said, tears in her eyes. "You love this place. You used to drag us here every summer." Daniel stared at the sharks for a long time. "I remember dreaming about the ocean. Even in Cambodia, when everything was terrible, I would dream about swimming with sharks. I didn't know why. I thought it was just my imagination." "It wasn't your imagination," Jennifer said. "It was your memory, the real you, trying to survive." The investigation continued to expand. Chen Yongwei was arrested but died in custody before trial, officially a suicide, though there were suspicious circumstances. Dozens of others involved in the trafficking network were arrested across multiple countries. The cruise industry faced massive scrutiny, leading to major reforms in security protocols and oversight. Several other victims from the Cambodia compound were identified and returned to their families. Some cases went back even further than Daniel's, children who had been missing for 20 years or more. Thomas Walsh's network of corruption within the cruise industry was exposed. Several executives and security personnel were arrested. The cruise line that had operated the Caribbean Dream paid a massive settlement to the Mitchell family. Though no amount of money could compensate for 15 stolen years, the anonymous crew member who had recorded the videos never came forward. Their identity remained a mystery. But Jennifer thought about them often. The 19-year-old who had witnessed something horrible, who had been too scared to speak up at the time, but who had kept the evidence for 15 years until they finally found the courage to share it. "Thank you," Jennifer said in an interview, looking directly at the camera, hoping somehow the person would see it. "Whoever you are, you saved my son. You gave him back to me. You were scared, and I understand that. But you didn't destroy the evidence. You kept it safe until you could share it. Because of you, Daniel is home. Because of you, other victims were rescued. You're a hero, even if you can't reveal yourself. Thank you." 2 years after Daniel returned home, the Mitchell family took a trip to the beach in North Carolina. It was Daniel's idea, the first real decision he had made about something he wanted to do. Ashley came with her fiancé. Robert came with his second wife, who had embraced Daniel as part of their family. Jennifer came alone, but happy, finally able to feel joy without the constant undercurrent of grief. They watched Daniel walk along the beach, his bare feet in the sand, staring out at the endless blue water. He stood there for a long time, just watching the waves. "What are you thinking about?" Jennifer asked when she joined him. "I'm thinking that I'm finally here," Daniel said. "The ocean. I dreamed about it for 15 years. I used to think the dreams were torture, showing me something beautiful I would never have. But maybe they were keeping me connected to who I was, to who I am." "Are you Daniel again?" Jennifer asked gently. "Or are you still David, or someone in between?" Daniel smiled, a real smile, not the cautious ones he usually gave. "I think I'm both. I'm Daniel Mitchell from Columbus, Ohio, who loved sharks and dreamed of being a marine biologist. And I'm also the person who survived the compound, who learned to be strong in ways I wish I never had to learn. I'm both, and I think that's okay." "It's more than okay," Jennifer said, taking her son's hand. "You're here. That's all that matters." That evening, as the family had dinner at a beachside restaurant, Daniel pulled out his phone and showed them something. "I've been researching marine biology programs," he said. "I know I'm 26 and should have graduated college years ago. But I was thinking, maybe it's not too late to try, to see if I can still make that dream happen." Ashley grinned. "You're going to be the oldest freshman in the dorm." "Probably," Daniel agreed. "But I've already survived the worst thing I can imagine. College should be easy by comparison." They all laughed. And for the first time in 17 years, they felt like a family again. Different than before, changed by trauma and time, but still connected by love and determination. The boy who vanished from a cruise ship in 2008 had returned as a man in 2023. The journey between those 2 points had been unimaginable, horrific, but he had survived. They all had. And somewhere out there, someone who had filmed 2 crucial videos was living their life, carrying the knowledge that they had changed everything, that their courage, even 15 years delayed, had brought a son home to his mother, had exposed a criminal network, had given other victims a chance at freedom. The tape left on the internet 15 years later had contained more than just evidence. It had contained hope, truth, and the possibility of redemption. And sometimes, that's enough to bring someone home. In 2026, Daniel Mitchell graduated from Ohio State University with a degree in marine biology. Jennifer cried through the entire ceremony. Daniel gave a speech at graduation about resilience, about how it's never too late to pursue your dreams, about how the darkest periods of our lives can't extinguish who we truly are. He took a job with a marine conservation organization working to protect ocean ecosystems. He traveled to dive sites around the world, always with a support team, always with someone who knew his history and could help if he had a PTSD episode, but he was doing it, living his dream. The nightmares still came sometimes, the memories of the compound, the fears that he would be taken again, but they came less frequently. Therapy helped, family helped, purpose helped. Jennifer published a book about their experience. The Boy Who Came Home, a mother's story of loss, hope, and survival. All proceeds went to anti-trafficking organizations. Ashley became a specialist in missing persons cases, working with the FBI. She dedicated her career to finding lost children and bringing them home, inspired by her brother's story. The Mitchell Family Foundation expanded its mission to include supporting survivors of human trafficking in their reintegration process. And every June 17th, on the anniversary of the night Daniel was taken, the Mitchell family gathered, not to mourn, but to celebrate that he had survived, that he had come home, that love had proven stronger than evil. On one of these anniversaries, 5 years after Daniel's return, something unexpected happened. Jennifer received a package in the mail, no return address, just her name written in careful block letters. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. "Mrs. Mitchell, I was the person who recorded those videos 15 years ago. I was 19, scared, and thousands of miles from my family, who I was supporting with my cruise ship salary. When those men threatened to hurt my family if I ever spoke, I believed them. I've spent 20 years looking over my shoulder, afraid they would find out I kept the footage. But your son is home now. The network has been destroyed. I saw Daniel's graduation announcement online. I saw him living his dream, and I realized that I can finally stop being afraid. I wanted you to know that I never forgot about Daniel, not for a single day. I kept those videos safe, waiting for the right moment, the moment when sharing them wouldn't put my family at risk. When I heard Thomas Walsh had died, I knew it was time. I recorded more than just those 2 videos. The USB contains everything I witnessed that night. Conversations I overheard, names that were mentioned. Details that might help close other cases, find other victims. I'm sharing it now because I want every family to have what you have. Answers, hope, their children home. You don't need to know who I am. You don't need to thank me. Seeing Daniel graduate, seeing him smile in those photos, seeing him alive. That's all the thanks I need. Tell Daniel I'm sorry I couldn't be braver sooner, but tell him I'm proud of him for surviving, for coming home, for not letting them win. A friend." Jennifer sat holding the note for a long time, tears streaming down her face. Then she called Agent Chen. The USB contained hours of footage, conversations, and evidence that would help close dozens of other cases, names of other victims, details of other trafficking operations, information that would bring more families closure, more survivors home. The anonymous crew member's final gift would save even more lives. The additional footage on the USB filled in the complete picture of what happened to Daniel Mitchell on June 17, 2008. Viktor Petrov, the crew member who had initially taken Daniel, had been specifically assigned to target him. Thomas Walsh had been watching the Mitchell family throughout the cruise, noting that Daniel often wandered away from his parents, that he was friendly and trusting, that he would be easy to lure. The plan had been in motion for days. Carlos Ruiz, the friendly crew member who had befriended Daniel, was innocent, but his kindness had been exploited. Someone had told Daniel that Carlos wanted to show him the engine room, using Carlos's name to lure Daniel into the restricted crew areas. Once in the storage room, Daniel had been held for 2 hours while the ship continued its course. At 11 p.m., as most passengers slept, a small boat had pulled alongside the Caribbean Dream at a predetermined location. The ship's security cameras had been temporarily disabled, Thomas Walsh's doing. Daniel, sedated but conscious, had been transferred to the boat. The operation had taken less than 10 minutes. By 11:15 p.m., Daniel was gone from the ship, and the cameras were reactivated. As far as any official record showed, Daniel had simply vanished at 9:47 p.m. from Deck 7. The small boat had taken Daniel to a cargo ship waiting in international waters. From there he was transported to Cambodia, where he was sold to Chen Yongwei's compound. He arrived on June 23, 2008, 6 days after disappearing from the cruise ship. For the first year, Daniel had been kept isolated, told repeatedly that his family was dead, that America had forgotten about him, that he had no home to return to. The psychological manipulation was sophisticated and brutal. Eventually, Daniel's memories became confused, fragmented. He began to believe what he was told. By the time he was 13, he had been integrated into the compound's operations, forced to work the online scam schemes that generated money for his captors. He was given the name David. His English skills made him valuable. He could run American-targeted scams convincingly. For 15 years, he lived this way. He made attempts to escape in the early years, but they all failed, and the punishments were severe. Eventually, he stopped trying. He survived by dissociating, by separating himself from the memories of who he had been. Daniel Mitchell became a dream, a fantasy, something that couldn't be real, until the day Cambodian authorities raided the compound and someone told him he was going home. Daniel Mitchell's case became one of the most significant human trafficking cases in modern history. It exposed the vulnerability of cruise ship passengers, led to major industry reforms, and helped rescue hundreds of other victims from similar situations. The cruise industry implemented sweeping changes: comprehensive security camera coverage with no blind spots, biometric tracking for all passengers and crew, immediate alerts when passengers enter restricted areas, independent security audits, mandatory crew background checks, through Interpol rapid response protocols for missing persons. These changes were dubbed Daniel's Law in his honor. The Mitchell Family's Foundation became a leading organization in supporting trafficking survivors, helping them reintegrate into society and reclaim their identities. Daniel himself became an advocate, speaking at conferences and working with law enforcement to train them on trafficking patterns and survivor psychology. He was uniquely qualified. He had lived through it and survived. "I don't want anyone to pity me," Daniel said in a TED Talk that went viral 3 years after his return. "I want people to understand that survivors are everywhere. We're your neighbors, your co-workers, your classmates. We've experienced unimaginable trauma." He was uniquely qualified. He had lived through it and survived. "I don't want anyone to pity me," Daniel said in a TED Talk that went viral 3 years after his return. "I want people to understand that survivors are everywhere. We're your neighbors, your coworkers, your classmates. We've experienced unimaginable trauma, but we're still here. We're still human. We still have dreams. I lost 15 years of my life, but I'm not going to lose the rest of it to anger or fear. I'm going to live. I'm going to experience everything they tried to take from me. That's how I win. The video of his TED Talk has been viewed over 50 million times. The identity of the crew member who recorded the videos was never revealed. Investigators tried to identify them from the footage, but the person had been careful. Their face was never shown, and voice analysis was inconclusive. Some people criticized them for waiting so long. If they had come forward immediately, Daniel could have been rescued years earlier, critics said. But most people, including the Mitchell family, understood the crew member had been young, scared, and dealing with organized criminals who had proven they were willing to threaten families. They had done what they could, preserved the evidence, and shared it when it was safer to do so. Without that person, we would never have known what happened, Jennifer said. We would still be believing Daniel fell overboard. We would never have found him. Yes, I wish they could have come forward sooner, but I also understand why they couldn't. And I'm grateful, so grateful, that they kept that evidence safe for 15 years. That took courage, too. There was speculation about who the anonymous crew member might be. Some thought it was a woman based on the size of the hand visible in one frame. Others thought it was one of the young men who had worked in food service. Several had been interviewed but never identified as the recorder. Whoever they were living somewhere in the world carrying the knowledge that they had changed everything, that their 2 videos, posted anonymously after 15 years of silence, had brought Daniel Mitchell home to his family. Exposed to human trafficking network led to the rescue of over 200 victims from the Cambodia compound, triggered industry-wide reforms that would protect future passengers, helped solve dozens of other cold cases through the evidence on the USB. One person's decision to hit upload had changed the world. In June 2028, exactly 20 years after his disappearance, Daniel Mitchell stood on the deck of a research vessel in the Caribbean. He was part of a marine biology team studying coral reef restoration. The ship was not far from where the Caribbean Dream had been that night in 2008. He looked out at the dark water, the same water that had once been his prison, the place where he had vanished. But now he was here by choice, pursuing his dream, studying the ocean he had always loved. His phone buzzed, a message from his mother. Thinking of you today, so proud of who you've become, love you forever. Another message from Ashley. Happy anniversary of coming home, little brother. You're the strongest person I know. And one from a number he didn't recognize. I saw your research published in the journal. You're doing amazing work. I always knew you would. I'm glad I waited to see you succeed before disappearing for good. Take care, Daniel. A friend. Daniel stared at the message, the anonymous crew member. After all these years, they were still watching, still making sure he was okay, and now they were finally saying goodbye. He typed a response, "Thank you for everything. You gave me my life back. I hope you find peace. You deserve it." The message showed as delivered, but was never marked as read. The number was disconnected when he tried calling it later. The anonymous crew member had shared their final message and disappeared back into the world, their mission finally complete. Daniel stood at the railing, the same kind of railing he had stood at 20 years ago as an 11-year-old boy, and smiled. The ocean stretched out before him, infinite and beautiful. He had survived the worst it could throw at him, and now he was studying its wonders, protecting its ecosystems, living his dream. The boy who vanished from a cruise ship in 2008 had become the man he was always meant to be, and somewhere, an anonymous hero could finally rest, knowing they had helped make that possible. Authors note, this story is inspired by the real phenomenon of disappearances on cruise ships, which number in the dozens every year. While Daniel Mitchell is a fictional character, the vulnerabilities in cruise ship security, the challenges of investigating crimes in international waters, And the reality of human trafficking networks are all too real. If you or someone you know has information about human trafficking, contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline, 1-888-373-788. Every survivor's story matters. Every voice deserves to be heard. And sometimes it takes years to find the courage to speak, but it's never too late to tell the truth. The boy who came home in memory of all those still missing, and in hope for those still searching.